All right. Good morning, everyone. So, today we're just going to take some time quickly to talk about the different types of constructors that you can write in Java, as well as what it looks like when you actually want to create an object. So, I know you've seen me probably do this in a couple of videos, but I figured I wanted to make another one that explicitly went through, sorry, that was my dog. He just bumped his head into my desk. That explicitly went through how to actually create it, what that one line of code is doing, so forth and so on. So here on Replit, and I can share this link as well so you guys can see this full code and everything when we're done, is I just created this one class. Right now I just have two, right? I have the main class here with just our standard, print hello world, and then I have burger.java here where I'm going to create a class called burger, right? Public class burger. It's going to represent a hamburger, cheeseburger, whatever you want it to be, right? So I'm going to create a couple of instance variables here. Private boolean has cheese, right? If this is a cheeseburger, it's got cheese. Private int num toppings, right? How many toppings did you have? Did you put pickles, ketchup, mustard, whatever it may be, right? And lastly, we're going to have private string menu name, right? So what's the name on the menu? Now, if you were in class yesterday, right, you remember we talked about the default constructor, where if I didn't write a constructor at all, and I just wrote some accessors, right, get cheese, we'll say, and I can return has cheese, right? Here I can write my accessor for num toppings, right, so get toppings, we'll call it, just to make this a little shorter here, right, return num toppings. And then lastly, my public string get name, and we can return menu name. Remember now, this is perfectly valid. Even though I didn't write a constructor, it's totally fine because Java gives me that default constructor that will set has cheese to false, num toppings to 0, and menu name to be null, meaning it'll create this space in memory, but it's just going to be an empty box. Right? It's not the empty string with no characters. It's literally an empty box that's waiting for a string. Just one isn't there yet. So this is totally fine. Right? And so now, though, I'm going to write a constructor, and I'm going to write two separate ones. Right? One that takes no parameters. Right? This is just going to be like my blank burger. Right? Your standard plain hamburger off the menu, and then maybe, you'll go over to the side of the restaurant where you can get your ketchup, pickles, and add it yourself. Right? So here, has cheese is false. Num toppings, it's got none. And menu name equals the empty string. Because I don't know what this thing's called. Right? Or I could just say in here, menu name equals, right, plain burger. Or whatever you want it to be. Right? But the idea is here, this is now what I'm going to call my base case. Right? No specific parameters. So you'll see oftentimes, right, sometimes on the AP exam, but oftentimes in real life, classes will have multiple constructors, right? Sometimes, most of them will have this one, which is called a zero parameter constructor, right? So this is called a zero parameter constructor. And the reason for that literally is because it takes 0 parameters, right? It doesn't take any, so that's why it's called a zero parameter constructor. Now, other constructors, if they take parameters, for instance, let's say I can write a constructor here where I know everything. For Boolean, we'll say HC for has cheese, int T for toppings, string N for name, right? And so I can say has cheese equals HC, num toppings equals T, and menu name equals N, right? This specific one here is called a parameterized constructor. For the sole fact, I can't spell here, for the sole fact that it takes parameters. Now, it's also important to remember here, the order of these parameters is important because if I create a constructor here that has them in a different order, right? Let's say instead of the Boolean first, let's say I put the string first. This is totally fine, but it takes them in a different order, right? So this is actually called overloading the constructor. When I have multiple here, now this is kind of silly. I would never do something like this where it takes the same exact type of parameters just in a different order, because it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? If I knew all three of these things, if I knew what everything was, right? Like if I order, I don't know, like a double from In-N-Out. I've never been there, but apparently that's a thing, right? I'm going to know everything. I'm going to know exactly what I want. I only need one constructor for that, right? But let's say all I really know here is I know the number of toppings. That's all I know, right? I just know I want the number of toppings. So I can set has cheese equal to false, num toppings equal to t, and the menu name equals, because this is no longer a plain burger, but I don't know what this thing is called, right? So when you have these multiple constructors, right, this is just simply called, and this exists as a concept throughout Java, it's called overloading. Or in general here, or more specifically I should say here, we're overloading the constructor. I have multiple constructors, but they're different, right? They all have the same name. They're all called public burger, but one takes 0 parameters, one takes 3 parameters, one takes 1 parameter. I could write, another one that just takes 2 parameters, right? Let's say string n and int t, right? I don't know if I want cheese or not. I'm standing at the counter wavering. So I can say menu name equals n, and num toppings equals t, and has cheese equals false, right? But notice still in each constructor, I'm initializing every single instance variable. Even if I don't take a parameter for it, I'm still able to initialize it in the constructor. So I hope that makes sense, right? The idea that I can create multiple constructors to deal with various different scenarios, right? Maybe, if you're thinking about a person class, maybe for an incoming freshman, maybe they don't know, right? Parents forgot to put their birthday, right, on the form when they register them, right? Well, if I'm going to construct that student, I need to make sure I have a parameter or a constructor that deals with, well, what if I don't know the birthday, right? What if I don't know their address? What if they don't know their specific address yet because they're building a new house, right? So you can see how having multiple different constructors here can be helpful. And where this comes into play now is when I'm actually trying to create an object, right? So if I go to my main class here, and I want to create a new burger, right? The first thing I need to do here is declare what type do I have, right? So this is a burger. And now this is the object name, right? Burger plain equals new burger. Perfect. I've just created a new burger, right? This line here calls the 0 parameter constructor. Anytime you see the word new, that immediately means it's going to call the constructor, right? So the keyword new means call constructor. So what it's going to do when it sees this line of code, right, is my computer is going to jump to the burger class and look for a constructor that has 0 parameters, right? And so now if I wanted to, right, let's make sure this worked because this menu name should be plain burger. So I can go over here and say, all right, let's print, if I could type, right, plain.getName. And let's run that, and if I did this correctly, it should print out, what did I do? Where's my errors here? Modifier public not allowed here. This means I just didn't close something. Aha. Yeah, this is messing everything up. Let's get rid of that for a moment. I don't know why that was hanging out there. Let's try this again now. And what we should get is it should just print out plain burger. Perfect, right? Plain burger. So as you can see, right, that's the only constructor here that sets the name to just be plain burger. Now, if I knew what I wanted this thing to be, right, instead of just saying new burger with no parameters, I can put the specifics there. Now, it's important to remember here the order. So if I look back at my constructor here, it's Boolean, integer, name, right? So we'll say true, 3 toppings, and the name is, I don't know, triple decker, right? It's got 3 toppings, so we'll call it the triple decker, right? And so now if I run this, it should print triple decker. Perfect. Right? So now this line of code here called my parameterized constructor. Get rid of this here. Right? And so again, the same idea, right? If I wanted to call this constructor, I would just put in one integer. If I wanted to call this constructor, I would put in a string followed by an integer. So understand, right? The whole goal of this video is just to show you that, hey, I can have multiple different constructors that deal with multiple different scenarios. And depending on what I write here, right, will determine which constructor you call, right? So again, this is our 0 parameter. This next one down here is your parameterized constructor. If I was going to call with just a integer or a string in integer, right, that would call a separate one. So again, I will share this code and I will put this up on Classroom for you guys so you can also see everything I wrote here without having to scroll back through the video. But I hope this made sense. For the rest of today, just finish up that soccer player class and have a great weekend, guys. I'll see you next week. Bye.